Good morning, everybody. Are we excited to be here this morning? We got through January. Hooray, well done. Well done, everyone. A quick question to start with the person next to you, or if you don't like the look of them, you can just think about it yourself. What's the best speech or maybe sermon you ever heard? Off you go. Here we go. So, the reason I ask is because we are launching a new series today that we're going to be looking at over the several Sundays to come. And we are going to look at one of the greatest speeches ever given. I know it's one of the greatest speeches ever given because it's in this book. And we're going to look at a speech, a sermon that Jesus gives. Many of us will have read it. Even if you've never read a Bible before, you will have heard bits of it before. That's how famous it is. And it's the Sermon on the Mount. You can find it in Matthew 4 and 5. And as I say, we're going to look at it over the next few weeks. I'm really excited about it. I love this passage. It really speaks to me. I love looking at it. It's the kind of passage that gets under your skin. It's really hard to live up to. It's also quite hard to preach on. And I just want to set expectations, guys. This will not be a better sermon than the Sermon on the Mount, all right? So I'd encourage you to read it yourself over the next few weeks, to really get to grips with what Jesus is saying. It's a fascinating passage. And essentially what's happening here is it's like Jesus' manifesto. I don't know what you think about manifestos. Around election time, there's lots of manifestos, aren't there? I don't want to know your favourite. I'm not getting into that. I don't want to know your favourite. The fascinating thing, right, about manifestos, about election time, right? They've all got them. All got good ideas about what we should do. But only one of the manifestos gets manifested. Only one. And we as a nation pick one, and then that's the one that happens. In your lives, my friends, there are lots of manifestos. There are lots of people who tell you you should live like this. There are lots of self-help gurus, lots of books, lots of aunts and uncles. Lots of people have got very strong opinions about how you should live your life. What I'd say to you, my friends, is that in the same way as a nation, we choose one manifesto to get manifested. You get to choose a manifesto to be manifested in your life. Only one of them gets to happen. And I'd encourage you, as you read this passage, make it this one. If you're going to choose a way to live, make it Jesus's. I think it's fascinating. It's a beautiful passage as Jesus fleshes out a way of living that's more beautiful. And he has this brilliant phrase that we're going to come back to time and time again, because Jesus does. It's a great riff. Jesus says, "You've heard it was said, but I say to you." You've heard that it was said this. You've heard these ideas. You've heard these concepts. You've heard these suggestions, but I say to you. And that's what we're going to be focusing over the next couple of weeks. What is it that Jesus, you've heard it was said this. You've heard these ideas, but I say to you. I say to you this. So let's pick up the story. It's been an eventful few weeks for Jesus. So Jesus is about 30, which makes me feel old. Do you remember that time footballers started being younger than you? And then the police started to be younger than you. Now I'm getting to the stage where messiahs are starting to be younger than me, and it's making me feel old. Anyway, Jesus is 30. He's younger than I am now, which is upsetting. Anyway, Jesus is 30, and he is exploding into public life. He's been born in a bit of a backwater, but this is his moment to kind of announce himself on the stage. A lot has happened for Jesus in the last few weeks. He has been baptized by his cousin John. He's been baptized, and then immediately he's gone out into the desert for 40 days, and he's wrestled there. It's like a spiritual wrestling, a wrestling where some of us have experienced that, a time where we've really had to wrestle. Jesus come out of that. He's come out of the desert, and he's starting to preach. He's starting to teach. He's starting to form his public ministry. So a lot's going on. We pick up the story here. This is in Matthew 5, and it says, "As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. 'Come, follow me,' Jesus said, 'and I will send you out to fish for people.' At once they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, They're in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left their boats and followed him. Now, often we can skip over bits in the Bible, but I think before we get to Jesus' famous speech in the next passage, I think we do need to have a little look at this bit. So just to remind ourselves, Jesus come out of the desert and he's walking down the street and he sees two people in a boat and he says, come follow me. And here's the bizarre thing. Like, we read it because it's in the Bible, but you're like, and they do. Like, can you just picture it for a second, all right? Jesus is walking down the road to some people he has never met before, as far as we can tell, and he says to them, they're probably like, I don't know, teenagers, I don't know, 13, 14, maybe, we're not quite sure, somewhere around there, and he's just like, come follow me. And they do. Have you tried to get a teenage boy to do something? It's a miracle. He says, come, and they're jumping out of the boats. They're like, see you later, Dad. I feel sorry for Zebedee, actually. I don't know, he doesn't get enough airtime. Poor guy, he's out there trying to do some fishing. He's got his two sons helping him. And then what does he say he goes home? And he's like, where were the boys? He's like, well, they went. So, guys, you're going to help me with these nets? And they've just gone. They've gone to... I think we need to understand what's going on here. We need to understand what's going on here to put a little bit of context into Jesus' opening teaching. What did you want to be when you were younger? You got some good ones? Astronaut. That's a good one. That's on my list. There we are. That's on my there. Astronaut made it to the list as a professional athlete. Anyone want to do that? Yeah, some of you want to be, yeah. Anyone want to be an astronaut? We got one. Anyone want to be a CEO? Yeah, lots of you wanting to be CEOs. I wanted to be a firefighter. And then my dad sat me down and was like, you do know you have to go up ladders. And so I asked, can I be a firefighter who just specialises in ground floor fires? I just want the ones with the tea towel in the kitchen. That's what I want to do. Like, apparently you can't do that, so I'm not one. Anyway, there we are. That's what I wanted to do. I don't know what you're doing. Apparently, if you were a kid in first century kind of Palestine, Judea region, you wanted to be a rabbi. That's what you wanted to be. Now, a rabbi was a religious teacher. And everyone wanted to be a rabbi. They all wanted to be a rabbi. That was the aim. So they're all hoping to become this kind of position of authority, this kind of teacher of the law, this person who embodied the teachings of God. That's what people wanted to be. But I was researching this. Apparently it was quite hard. By the age of 6, you memorized Leviticus. Leviticus. Have you tried reading Leviticus? There are so many names. I'm happy if my 6-year-old can remember their own name. Remember all of it, all of Leviticus. Some of us love Leviticus. I enjoy a lot of it. I think there's a lot of wonderful truth, but I'll tell you what, I'm not memorizing it. By the age of 6, can you memorize Leviticus? No, sorry, you're out. Can you No, sorry, not for you. Off you go. Anyway, memorize Leviticus by the age of 6. Then you moved into the next stage of school. By the age of 12, you memorized the Torah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. 5 books of the Bible. You memorized it word for word. By the age of 12, all of it. And then at the age of 12 or 13, you had a test. Sorry for the PTSD that image has caused some of the adults in the room. Or the stress it's caused some of our younger people who've got them coming up. They had a test age 12 or 13, the end of school. I read this about this, by the way. It's from a guy called Shea Willard, who I quote a lot because I think he knows a lot about this. Anyway, this is what he says. At the age of 12 was a big test. They weren't graded on whether they knew the answers, but on whether they asked the right questions. It says in Luke that when Jesus was 12 years old, he was wowing the teachers of the law with his questions. Hebrew scholars were not noted for their answers. They weren't noted for coming to a destination or putting a theology into a system of bullet points. They were noted for their ability to keep the discussion about God going longer. That's good, isn't it? Some of us this week in your families, in your workplaces, look, you don't have to have the answers. You just need to keep the discussion about God going longer. In Christianity, it's not about being able to recite the doctrine or the creed. It's about, can you ask the right questions? Can you keep the discussion about God going longer? Jesus is wowing the teachers with his questions age 12. And the truth is that 99% of them, age 12, just didn't make the cut. Sorry, guys, just not for you. You're good, but you're not quite what we're looking for. What you need to do, this is what all the 12 and 13-year-olds would have done who had a test about how they would ask the right questions. They'd be told, sorry, but this rabbi thing ain't... Off you go and learn your family trade. Off you go. Go become a carpenter or a greengrocer or a fisherman. Like, off you go. Thanks, but you're not quite what we're looking for. Now, I imagine many of us who wanted to be astronauts, who wanted to be professional athletes, who wanted to be a CEO. We've heard that, haven't we? We know that. We know that phrase. Sorry, you're just not quite what we're looking for. You're good, but now's not a great time. You haven't quite got, there were other candidates. Now, I'm honest, right? It's fine that we're not all professional athletes. Like, that's okay. We can't all be professional curlers or whatever it is we all dreamed of being. Like, and it's okay. It's okay that we're not all astronauts. But imagine the context. These people are being tested on their knowledge of Scripture. And it is a very fine line between you are not able to become a rabbi. You're not good enough to become a rabbi, and you are not good enough for God. You can see how for many people those two things would have been interchangeable. Because you've been told, sorry, you're not quite cut out for ministry. Sorry, this practice of following God, that's not... Someone else is going to do that. The very best would move on to the next stage. Age 12 or 13, they'd move on to the next stage. And the very, very best, the ones who could ask the right questions, they became disciples of a rabbi. It was like work experience, like you learn on the job. Do you remember doing that when you were younger? The first time you went into the real world, and then you just had to find someone and you had to shadow them. Who's had to do that? Yeah, you have to shadow someone. Who's had to have someone shadow them? Yeah, less fun. But you had to shadow someone. You had to copy them. It was very intense. So you've got these people between the age of 12, 13 and the age of 30. And they would follow around a rabbi. They'd follow them around. And so the rabbi would go and all the disciples would be following this rabbi and this teacher. Now, this was an intense process. Apparently, I was reading some rabbis, certainly early doors, to get them into shape. They would literally tie them all together and they would follow the rabbi a bit like, if I was in charge of a primary school outing, this is what I would do. Just tie them all together so they can't be lost. We'd put them all together and then they just follow the leader like little ducklings behind, all right? Apparently that's what would happen. You'd have the rabbi at the front. Just picture it now. You've got the rabbi, then you've got a bit of string tied to the next one, and they would argue about who was at the front. Because the one closest to the rabbi was the most important. The one at the back was the least important. They would argue over who would be first and who would be last. And Jesus had some things to say about that. But anyway, Jesus is walking along. And they're all tied together like little ducklings. And if the rabbi had a limp, they had a limp. If the rabbi had a northern accent, they had a northern accent. They were so desperate to copy the rabbi, everything, the teaching, the way they walked, the way they talked, they would copy it. There are stories you can read. The rabbis used to have to kick them out of the toilet because they were trying to follow them in there. This is how much they were desperate to follow the rabbi, to copy the rabbi. And you've got these disciples following and copying the rabbi. After 18 years of that, the very best of the disciples would become rabbis themselves. Many people think the reason we do not hear much about Jesus between the age of 12, between the age of 30, is because this is exactly what he's doing. And clearly, at the age of 30, Jesus has become a teacher. He has become a rabbi. And he is moving out into the public space for the first time as a rabbi. And what do rabbis need? They need some disciples. And we know the drill. They'd find the best of the best. They go to the graduation ceremonies. They find the ones who got top marks. And so they would be allocated. No. Jesus walks down the road. New rabbi on the block. And he sees some young boys, some teenagers, 12, 13, 14. And the only thing we know about them is that they weren't good enough. Why do we know that? Because they were fishermen. And if they were good enough, they wouldn't be fishing, they'd be in rabbi school. And Jesus finds these people, he's walking down the road, and he sees some young men who have been told at some point, sorry, but this life just isn't for you. Sorry, you're not quite cut out for ministry. He sees these young men who at some point have been told, you haven't got what it takes. He sees them and he looks them in the eye and he says, you, come and follow me. I'm choosing you. No wonder they're jumping out of the boat. They're desperate. They're desperate to get to Jesus. Why? Not because they believe in Jesus, but because Jesus believes in them. He believes in them. He's seen them and he sees they've got something. And he speaks to them. He says, you're enough. You're enough. You're enough. You've got it. Come follow me. Many of us have been carrying around the weight of some words that have been spoken over us. I told you that Jesus repeats this riff time and time again in his sermon. You have heard it was said, but I say to you. He begins by embodying that message here. He begins by embodying it, by rewriting their internal monologue. And some of us this morning, you need to hear this. You need someone to rewrite your internal monologue. Because you've heard it was said that you're disqualified for ministry. You've heard it was said that God isn't interested in people like you. You've heard it was said all kind of lies and nonsense that have held you back. But Jesus says, follow me. He says, you're enough. He says, I can work with you. I can do something. You're enough. You can follow me. This is a new rabbi, and he's doing things differently. This is a Jesus who is qualifying the unqualified. This is a Jesus who is finding the ones who have been told they're not got it and says, you've got it. This is Jesus who's finding the last and the least and the lost and the people who aren't good enough and the people who aren't articulate enough and the people who aren't good at school, people who aren't smart enough, the people who didn't pass their... He finds those people and says, you're with me now. You're with me now. Come follow me. Come follow me. I'm going to make you into something. I'm going to make you fish. I'm going to turn you into something groundbreaking. And my question to you this morning is the same question the disciples had to answer. You're going to get out of the boat? You're going to get out of the boat? To a Jesus, a rabbi looks at you and says, come and follow me. I believe in you. Even if you don't really believe in yourself. Even if you've taken on board the lies. You've heard it was said, but I say to you, follow me. Follow me. And I'll make something beautiful and earth-shattering out of what we can do in the world. So will you get out of the boat? I should point out, and this is really important as you read the passage, makes sense of a lot of it, that even once you became a rabbi, there were like different strata of rabbi, like different strata of teachers, okay? Different stratas of ability. To make this point and to demonstrate it, so I'm a maths teacher, okay? Occasionally in my life, a fun maths problem will arise. I know obviously all maths problems are fun, but a particularly fun one will arise. And this will be said to me. Someone will turn to me and be like, Seven, you're a mathematician. At which point I say, no. I'm a maths teacher. And those that can't do, teach. No, I'm joking. That's not true for you lots. Just here's what I mean, right? What I'm good at doing, taking the maths that someone else has done and explaining it to a new audience, right? I can take the maths that someone else has done and I can explain it to a new audience. What I am not good enough to do or smart enough is to come up with my own maths. Do you see the difference? I can't do that. I once, to be fair, thought I'd come up with my own maths. It was in the middle of a lesson. I still remember it now. And I was so excited. It was like and I started writing frantically on the board. It was like Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. The kids didn't know what was going on. That didn't matter. I was obsessed. I thought I'd come up with a new... Anyway, it turns out I hadn't. Someone had got there first. That was very disappointing. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I've got the ability to say, Pythagoras says this. And I say to you, yeah, he was right then, and it's still right. It's still true. I'm not going to be like, oh, Pythagoras says this, but I say to you, take away C from, but I'm not going to say that, am I? I can't come up with my own maths. Anyway, rabbis had two strata. Most rabbis just had the ability or the authority to take what they'd been taught by their rabbi and pass it on to the next lot. You've heard it was said this, and I am repeating it to you. That's what most of them would do. Every now and then, there'd be a rabbi who had enough authority. And the word they used was samika. Every now and then a rabbi would come along who had enough authority that they would be able to bring a new way of seeing the world. Many of us are sick and tired of hearing some repackaged thing, some shallow teaching, some way of living our lives. I don't want to see another sign saying live, laugh, love. I want something better than that. I want something deeper. I want something more meaningful. And there would be some rabbis who carried enough weight, who had enough authority, and they would say, you've heard it was said this, but I am bringing something new. I'm bringing a new way of seeing the world. I've got a new way, and they used to call the rabbis' teachings their yoke. He used to call them their yoke, and if they had enough authority, they would be able to offer a new yoke. Not that kind of yoke, like that kind of yoke, like a yoke that you would carry. And Jesus says, I'm bringing you a new yoke, a new weight of teaching, a new thing to carry in your life. Because this is a Jesus who's got some authority. And if you're new to this, if you're new to church, if you clicked on this link online and it's the first time you've heard anyone at church talk, maybe you are sick and tired of hearing the same old stuff that's shallow, and I would invite you to do this. To read what Jesus says, to hear his word, allow the weight of it to rest on you. Try carrying his yoke, his way, his teaching. Jesus said, I've got a new yoke. We come to the passage where Jesus starts speaking. He says, you've heard it was said, do not murder. You've heard it was said, do not murder. And whoever murders shall be answerable to the court. But I say to you, I've got something new to say, that everyone who's angry with his brother shall be answerable to the court. And whoever says to his brother, you good for nothing, shall be answering to the Supreme Court. Whoever says, you fool, shall be guilty enough for the fires of hell. Jesus says, you've heard it was said, do not murder. Now, I don't know about you, but of all the commandments, I find that one quite easy to follow. I don't want to be all high and mighty, but I go days without even a bit of murdering. Again, I'm not trying to say I'm a big deal, but I regularly don't murder. Unfortunately, Jesus doesn't let me off the hook that easily. He says that's not enough. Don't get angry. Don't hold bitterness. Many of you have asked about my Christmas lights. This is the third and final edition of this story, by the way. For those of you who remember my Christmas talk, I paid someone to put on my Christmas lights. But because I'm too tight, they remain up because I refuse to pay a man to take them down. They will stay there until next December. Part 2 of the story, we left Charity, my wife, stranded because she had decided she wanted to put some reindeers up. Now, this picture is maybe confusing, so I'll explain it. It's from the upstairs of my house, and we left Charity stranded there. This is the bit, there's the front door somewhere over there, and this is the bit, like the little porch bit. Charity wanted to put some reindeers up there. She climbs up on top of this. I'm sure many of you remember the story. She's climbed on top of this. She's attached the reindeer here. In the pouring rain, I cannot emphasize enough how wet it was. The kind of rain that would give Noah PTSD. That's how bad it was. She's managed to put the reindeer up here. And, in case you remember, I had a brilliant idea. We shall attach it to this gate. Unfortunately, Charity had used this gate in order to climb up on the roof. You can see the gate's still there because I'm not taking that down. Anyway, she used the gate to climb up onto the roof, and now the gate was being used to hold the reindeer in place. Charity was then stuck. I, at this point, decided to go and make a cup of tea and left her to it. Charity decided that the only way of getting down from this predicament was to jump onto the trampoline, which you can see on the left there. There it is. She jumps onto the trampoline. I don't know if you've ever jumped on a trampoline when it's very wet. There's a lot of water going on. It splashes all over her. She is soaked. I've gone inside to make it. Now, I wish to point out, because I got some feedback on telling this story last time, I had also started making her a cup of tea as well. So let's just, all right, fine. I'm making the tea in the kitchen. Charity is absolutely drenched. She's so wet. She comes round to the back door near the kitchen where I'm making the tea. Now, this bit I appreciate doesn't paint me in the best light. Because I had noticed that our drain pipe was blocked, that some moss had come down from the gutter and was wedged in our drain pipe. Now, when the weather's good, you don't notice that a drain pipe isn't working. When it starts to rain, like it was, suddenly there is water spewing out at various angles, going all over the house. It's a mess. My next line was maybe not the kindest. It's like, Charity, before you come in and have a cup of tea, I've noticed the drain pipe's blocked. And you're already quite wet. So would it be a massive issue if you then tried to go and fix that? So Charity takes a screwdriver at the bottom of this drain pipe, which is down the side of the house from the gutters at the top, and she just gives it like a little puggle with a screwdriver, just a little puggle. Now, I don't know if you've ever done this with a drain pipe, but the pressure of 2 meters worth of water pressed down, as soon as you make a little bit of a display, it absolutely exploded everywhere. Months worth of moss and all the rubbish and the leaves that are clogged up just explodes everywhere. I can see you're worried. Don't worry, I was still in the kitchen, so I was fine. I know you're worried about me, but don't worry, I was fine. I was just watching through the window. Charity is covered in all of this stuff. Ah, how we laughed. How we laughed. By we, I mean me and the children. And the moral of this story is, marry a patient wife. It's the moral. Marry a good wife. A forgiving wife. My friends, Jesus gets the heart of the matter. Because he says, when the weather's good, no one will tell the difference. You can all go about not murdering. But if you let bitterness and resentment and anger and unkind words congeal and block up and permeate your soul, then when it rains, when the bad times come, when the pressure is building, and you go to work and one person makes one comment, and you go home and someone says something, and they haven't picked their stuff up off the floor, and one thing, and one message, and one comment, and one text, and suddenly you explode. Jesus says, I'm interested in what's going on inside your heart, because it's easy not to murder. But actually, that's the end of the line. What's going on? Are you building up resentment? Are you building up anger? Are you building up bitterness? Are you building up jealousy? Are you building up unkind words that is clogging up your soul and not allowing my love and my mercy to permeate you? Are there times when you have built up all of this rage inside? And Jesus says, he says you're in danger of the fires of hell. That's not an afterlife thing. Just outside the city gates was a rubbish dump. They called it Gehenna. That's the term Jesus is talking about here. And in this rubbish dump, think about it, first century, they would just burn the rubbish. They would burn and it would stink. And the fires would never go out as the fires burn. And the dogs would come and they'd howl and they'd wail. And it was a horrible place to be. And Jesus says, look, if you build up that anger and that bitterness and that resentment and that unkindness and that lack of forgiveness and that lack of generosity and that lack of grace, if you do that, your soul, your life will stink. Life will stink. It'll be like a rubbish dump on the outskirts of the city that no one wants to go to. My friends, I've got 2 phrases for you this week that I hope you can remember. The first one is, are you going to get out the boat? Are you going to get out the boat for a rabbi that looks at you and says, come follow me? No matter what you've done, no matter who says you're not good enough, I say, come follow me. And my question is, will you get out the boat? My other question to you this week, and I hope it sticks in your head and gets under your skin and changes the way you live, is simply this. Are you carrying the yoke of our rabbi? You carrying the yoke of our rabbi? Are you making a choice to say the kind thing? You're making a choice not to say the unkind thing. You're making a choice to forgive quickly, to hold things lightly. You're making a choice to go the extra mile, to be generous, to be kind, to be gracious, to be merciful. Are you following behind our rabbi so closely, copying how he walks and how he talks, because we are desperate to be like him? A rabbi who has chosen us, a Jesus who believes in you. This week, will you carry his yoke and live more beautifully? Let's pray as the band come up.